You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, we've got some bad news for Rudy Giuliani here. Just when you think things couldn't get worse for Donald Trump's embattled attorney, it seems like it has. Can you talk on what just happened here?
Yeah, so Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman, the two Georgia election workers that Rudy Giuliani defrauded and, frankly, whose lives he endangered. Remember, they won a money judgment against Rudy to the tune of $146 million. That was several months ago, and ever since, Brian, Rudy has been playing games with the system, trying to avoid having to begin paying out on that money judgment. Well, now the litigants, Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman, just filed an enforcement action in federal court in New York, availing themselves of the laws of the state of New York to begin collecting on that money judgment that Rudy owes them. Let me just read you one sentence from their brand new court filing in federal court in New York. They say the plaintiffs, Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman, seek two remedies to which they are entitled under New York law. One, an order requiring Giuliani to turn over personal property in his possession in satisfaction of that money judgment. And two, an order appointing the plaintiffs, Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman, as receivers with the power to take possession of and sell both real and personal property that Mr. Giuliani does not turn over. Remember, not too long ago, Rudy tried to avoid beginning to pay out on that money judgment by filing for bankruptcy. And what happened? The bankruptcy judge said, yeah, Giuliani, you're not even being straight with me and with this court, and discharged the bankruptcy case. So now the two women, the Georgia election workers, are free to pursue these lawful remedies in New York. And let me just, this is too good not to quote. Here is some of the property that Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman are seeking to seize and take control of from Rudy Giuliani. Giuliani's New York apartment, estimated to be worth more than $5 million, as well as his condominium in Palm Beach. They want his 1980 Mercedes-Benz SL500, his jewelry, his luxury watches, his sports memorabilia, including Yankees World Series rings and jerseys signed by Joe DiMaggio and Reggie Jackson. And here is the icing on the assets cake, Brian. They're also seeking the $2 million in legal fees that Donald Trump owes Rudy Giuliani. So they want to just leapfrog it right over Rudy, right into their bank account to begin to satisfy the $146 million money judgment they won against Rudy.
So this is actually going to end up costing Trump $2 million because God knows he wasn't going to ever bother paying Giuliani the $2 million that he was owed.
Yeah, just desserts, right? Now, I don't know the legal ins and outs when it comes to seizing money that, somebody else owes the losing litigant like Rudy Giuliani, but that is something for, civil practitioners and bankruptcy experts to kind of sort through and to fight over in that federal enforcement action in New York federal court.
Glenn, is there a world in which Giuliani can actually be successful in hanging on to his property here?
Not legitimately, not honestly, not in accordance with the law. He tried. Listen, bankruptcy is an accepted approach to somebody who is so deep in debt through, for any reasons. Whether it's money judgments or they're overextended on a mortgage or whatever. Bankruptcy is an accepted way to help a debtor out of a very difficult circumstance, but the debtor has to act in good conscience and good faith, honestly and honorably with the bankruptcy court and with the bankruptcy proceeding. Rudy wasn't even willing to do that. So I think, he has played every dirty card he had in his deck. And now I think these two women that he just savaged in his defamation of them are finally about to have their day and take Rudy for everything he has.
And Glenn, what's the timeline here now in terms of Giuliani being able to, in terms of Giuliani being forced to actually pay what he owes? Because to your exact point, he has dragged us through this process where he's been screwing around and playing games.
So it will be up to the assigned judge in this New York federal court enforcement action that was just filed last night. The next thing that judge will do, a Trump appointee, by the way, the next thing that judge will do is set a schedule to have Rudy Giuliani file a reply to the enforcement action that was just filed by Shaye Moss and Ruby Freeman. I suspect, Brian, it will move fairly expeditiously because Rudy has been ducking and dodging and, trying to stave off this money being collected for a very long time. And I can't imagine that federal judge in New York will have the time of day to continue to play Rudy's dirty games.
Do you have any concerns about the fact that it's a Trump appointee in terms of actually getting Giuliani to pay what he owes?
At first blush, I would say yes. I looked at the background and the credentials of this judge, and this was actually a judge that I believe was offered as one of several selections to Donald Trump by Chuck Schumer. So it may be that this was very early on in Donald Trump's term when they were trying to batch some judges together, maybe some judges who lean right, some judges who lean left. And, I don't want to say just because this is a Trump appointee, we should have concerns. There are some Trump-appointed judges who ended up calling it right down the line, right? Not leaning left, not leaning right. Think to some of the election interference lawsuits that were filed. Trump judge after Trump judge rejected Donald Trump and his dirty lawyers' attack on the results of the 2020 presidential election. So I do think in this day and age, Brian, we're always asking who appointed a particular federal judge. So I included that information, but I don't have any reason to believe that will present a problem for this litigation moving forward.
And finally, let's end with this. Why is it important that Shaye Moss and Ruby Freeman be granted what they're owed right now? Like, why should anybody watching have any sympathy for them?
Yeah, first and foremost, a jury decided that Rudy Giuliani defamed them over and over again, and that he damaged them. He damaged them mightily. The money damages that they came up with were $146 million. I am not in a position to second guess that determination by a jury. But even, I don't want to say more importantly, but as importantly, one of the principles of these kind of money judgments is to deter others who might attack our election workers, many of whom are volunteer workers, just trying to, ensure that our elections are run fairly and safely and impartially. And if you're going to have attack dogs of the very candidate who lost be permitted to go after the election workers who are trying to, provide and promote safe and secure elections, I mean, that is something that needs to be deterred. And if it needs to be deterred, to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, I think that is appropriate.
I couldn't agree more. With that said, we will, of course, stay on top of this as this process plays itself out, which hopefully happens sooner rather than later. So for those watching right now, if you want to follow along as Giuliani continues to cling on to whatever funds he has left in the meantime, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on this screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.